Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Crown Stag voiceover. My name is Neil Glasgow. So in today's video, what I want to talk to you about is 6 pitfalls really that do come up in voiceover with some examples and most importantly, how you can avoid them going forward. So with all of that in mind, let's get into it. So the idea behind this video is really just taking some of the comments and some of the experiences that I've had, my students have had, and just people I know in the industry have had around voiceover. And I wanted to sort of highlight these 6 specific things because these are the things that most often are going to come up. And if they haven't already hit you in the head in your own career, it's coming, so be aware of it. Number 1. It costs that much because it takes me hours. Now, this is essentially when a client comes to you, talks about the work that they want doing, and potentially they ask you for a quote. Now, you might go back and say it's X amount of money, £200-300, plus my buyout cost, my this cost, my that cost. And these are all reasonable costs that you would incur. And what the client might come back and say, oh, well, I was only wanting to pay £50 all in. Or I've got other clients who have done this, or I've worked with other VOs, or I've done, or whatever. The reality is what you do has a value assigned to it. If you're doing a TV commercial, a radio spot, a continuity, a telephone message, regardless, there is a quality element that goes with this. There is a setup cost that goes with all of this, and your time. That's the big bit. If you've got to go in and you've got to record multiple pieces, you've got to book out time in your diary, you've got to potentially get a studio, whatever it might be, it costs what it costs because, well, your cost should be reasonable, absolutely, but it costs what it costs because it does take you all that time to get it working the way it should. And I'm not just talking about the record at this point, I'm talking about all the hours and all the effort that you've put in to being the voiceover actor and artist that you are. That just doesn't happen overnight. You've invested your time, your effort, and your money into being the product that they can just buy off the shelf. That has an intrinsic cost. So my recommendation to you is be reasonable, but also don't be afraid to stick to your guns. Pitfall number 2. Know how much you're going to get paid ahead of recording. Now, let me give you an example. I've spoken with, it's happened to me, but this will probably happen to you at some point. Someone might contact you and they want you to record an audiobook. And that audiobook might be 200,000 words. And you think to yourself, that's quite a long book. Now, they might say, we'll pay you on the finished hour. And that might be, let's call it £100 per finished hour. But when you start breaking down that 200,000 words, you might find that actually you're only going to get £500. For example, let's say 10,000 words gets you about an hour, something along those lines. But let's say it's not as much as what you were expecting. And when you take into account, let's say it's a 5-hour book, well, that 5-hour book might take you 5 hours to read, then 5 hours to record if you make no mistakes. The reality is that might be, let's call it 8 hours. And then you've got your editing and mastering, let's call that another couple of hours. So we're up to 15 hours now for a 5-hour book. And that 15 hours means that whatever you're getting paid at the end, well, that value proposition drops. Because of all that time that you're doing all the bits that's not earning you money, that's money that you're losing. And if you're not doing this on a royalty scheme or anything along those lines, it's just an upfront payment of whatever the per finished hour is, yeah, be very aware of what your recording pace is and what that relatively represents. A good rule of thumb is about 1,000 words at a regular talking pace will get you anywhere between 7 and 10 minutes-ish. So if you can use that as a reference point, then you know that you've got 10 minutes, 60 minutes and an hour, how many words that's going to come out at, what that's going to represent for you at the end. Pitfall number 3, getting an outside perspective. Now, this is quite an important one. Lots of voiceover artists out there essentially work in silo, and they will really run two things. At some point, they'll run these two things. And the two things will be, I'm on it, I'm on top of it, I'm doing really well, or I'm crap. I don't like it, I'm not getting cast, I'm not getting anywhere, something's going wrong. And the reality is at both ends of that spectrum, I would still recommend getting some sort of peer review. And taking the peer reviews with a pinch of salt, okay? So let's just use Reddit as an example. You could post your auditions, your demo reels, whatever that might be, for constructive, hopefully, critique on a platform like Reddit. Casting Call Club is great, but also reaching out to various other voiceover artists perhaps, and just saying, look, I'm quite confident in this, or I'm unconfident in this. Can I get a review from you? And what that does is something very specific. It gives you an industry level of experience from the people who are reviewing to say, well, look, in my opinion, I would have done X. Or I can hear something that perhaps you weren't intending on. And the thing that's really valuable about that is a lot of people, myself included, I'll go smash that, and then maybe 2 or 3 weeks later I might go back and go, oh God, I wasn't happy with that in hindsight. Well, actually, that's something that you can get immediately, especially when you're doing lots of auditions, potentially not getting where you want to get to. But also it gives you that opportunity to have it peer reviewed before submission. If you've got an audition that gives you, say, 24 hours to respond or longer, it can be valuable, but you do run the risk of being bottom of the pile if you don't respond quickly enough. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, that one, but getting peer reviewed absolutely has massive value. Pitfall number 4 is your cadence in your auditions. Now, let me just explain this a little bit. You're doing an audition and it might say we want high energy, or we want instructive or caring, or whatever it might be. They'll give you some level of instruction of how they want you to deliver it. But that doesn't give you, I suppose, a cadence to how to read this. And most cadences, that at least I've been successful with, have a sort of a wave pattern that can go with this. So you've got your emphasis words, you've got your highlight words, you've got your softer words, and that might not translate immediately from the script to how you read it. And you might do multiple takes of this. But one very good way, I found at least, and it works for my students as well, is if you've got the opportunity to take that audition script off the page, so put it onto like a Word document perhaps, and highlight the words that need emphasis or need a little bit more passion or slower, essentially editing the script so that it flows a little bit better for the way that you want to deliver that. And in putting words in bold and putting them in italic, it gives you a visual of that wave, because if it's in bold, you know you're going to go up. If it's not, you can come down, and it gives you a natural cadence, I'm using that word now, to deliver that. And I have found, I'm going to say 9.9 times out of 10, having that visual representation for someone who's not quite sure of how to deliver that gives them something that they can really hook onto, and it just flows a little bit better. It takes a minute to do, but actually it gives you more time to read the script, understand where you want it to be in terms of its delivery, and ultimately deliver a cleaner, better audition than you would if you just opened it up, read it for 3 seconds, and just gave it a go. Pitfall number 5, reading and talking are very different things. So what do I mean by this? The amount of people that I support with their training who will do like a spot check every so often and say, okay, right, here's a script, sight unseen, go. And you might have seen 100 of these sorts of things on TikTok or Twitter or whatever, right? But you get the idea. You see something you haven't seen, it gives you a little bit of instruction. So this is commercial. It's a exciting, sexy perfume advert. Go. And what people do is they'll fall into the habit of they will read what is said and it will come out just that little bit off. See what I'm saying there? Or hearing what I'm saying there? The tiny beats that you get when you're processing a word between saying it, and we're talking like half a second, if that, it becomes very noticeable. At least in my experience, it becomes very noticeable if instead you are just talking the way that I'm talking to you now, and you start slowing that down just a little bit to get the words that you think you're saying. It messes with your cadence, messes with your reading. Your job, your responsibility is to know what you're about to say. And the only way to do that is to read the scripts in advance to you recording them. That was a weird cadence there, but read them in advance to recording it. Even if you just read it a couple of times, say it in your head, say it out loud, take more than one take before you're finally happy with it to go. Because I promise you, people can hear you reading a mile off. And anyone who's in this industry for a long time who's doing casting, I promise you, they can hear you reading it. So do yourself a favour, and you need to absorb that information the best way that you know how, and know what you're about to say before you say it. And number 6, the last one. And this is a very important message that I want you to listen to, understand, and adopt, okay? Stop working to other people's standards and expectations and start working to yours. Now, I've said something about this in previous videos, but this really does bear repeating. What I'm talking about in terms of stop working to other people's expectations is if you are judging your career based on someone else's success, how long it took them to be successful, why didn't I get cast and they did? You're saying that's a lot about, well, they did these 3 things and I did these 3 things and I wasn't successful at this point. It's never that cut and dry. You need to create your own standard of what success looks like for you. Whether that is I landed 1 audition, I got an agent, I got a response on an email, whatever it is. I've always said take the little wins when they come, and judge your career goals, your milestones, based on your specific requirements. Now, I've talked to lots of people before who, I work full-time as a VO. I do some other work outside of VO as well, but predominantly I can jump in this booth at any point, day or night, record something, get it out, get paid. Not everyone has that. So you judging your ability to be where I am based on my setup, my exposure, my experience, my career is just setting yourself up for failure. And when you set yourself up for failure, all you're going to do is start resenting this job. And when you can actually start putting your own milestones in place, 6, 12, 18 months, something along those lines, and genuinely start at 6 months, it gives you the time and breadth to deliver what it is that you want to. If you start setting yourself up for failure right away by giving yourself an unrealistic timeline, again, you're going to start hating not delivering, not getting to where you imagine that you should be. And imagine might feel like a harsh word, but the reality is it isn't. People have got aspirations, they've got dreams and hopes of where they want to be, but that doesn't come overnight, and that really does have a luck element attached to it, as well as making sure that you get the right long-term contacts. The amount of times it happens to me where I'm contacted by someone that I might have emailed a year ago and I've never worked with, and they'll phone me up and say, hey, you might remember me, we've got this project now. And I'll say, yeah, sure, I definitely remember you. But yeah, let's talk about the project and let's get on with it. And that gives you that long-term view of what you're going to be able to do. If you set that up for 6 months and say, in 6 months' time, I'm going to have an agent, I'm going to have a successful audition, I'm going to have money in my bank account from VOICEOVER, those are the milestones to judge your career against. And I cannot underline that enough. Make your career expectations your own. Please don't judge yourself based on what someone else has done. Okay, and that's it. That's my 6 pitfalls that a lot of voiceover artists fall into, and hopefully how to address them. If you've liked the video at all, please do give it a like and subscribe. It does help the channel out. If you've got any comments, queries, questions, anything like that, put them in the comment section below. And if there's enough uptake on any particular topic, then I'll make a video about that. And remember, you can be a voiceover artist. I'll see you in the next video.